Madam President, in addition to my displeasure with the Federal Reserve Board, let me indicate to my colleagues that I have just introduced a piece of legislation. I would ask unanimous consent that it appear in this discussion. I've sent the legislation to the desk earlier that would prohibit banks in this country from trading in derivatives and proprietary accounts. Now, that all sounds like foreign language. I understand it. But go back to junk bonds in the 1980s and S&Ls. You've got that in spades in derivatives with banks in this country today. Some banks whose deposits are insured by the federal government are proprietary trading in derivatives. They just as well set up a roulette table in the lobby, laying off the risk for what is pure gambling on the American taxpayer. I say no bank whose deposits are insured by the federal government ought to be engaged in proprietary trading of derivatives. And that's the legislation I've introduced today, and I hope my colleagues who care about this issue will join me as co-sponsors on that legislation. I offered the legislation that is now law that said to the S&Ls, you can no longer buy any additional junk bonds and you have to sell all the junk bonds you have. And I pulled the center pole out from the tent of this junk bond speculation, this orgy that went on in the 1980s that cost the American people so much in lost revenue. I intend to do exactly the same thing on derivatives. Banks ought not to be involved in proprietary trading on derivatives. That's gambling with taxpayers' money, and we ought to take action to stop it. And that's the purpose of introducing the bill today. Madam President, I yield the floor.